G'day and welcome to the Investor Motivation Podcast. Today I've got Ash Rowan joining me from our remote office down in Melbourne and myself, Rob Goudie. And today we're obviously going to talk about a bit of case study like Ash and I have been doing on a regular basis, which has been good. How are you, Ash?
Good, Rob. How you going?
Good, mate. We're not far from AFL first round kicking off and football in general for those people in other states. Exciting times. How are the Pies looking?
I think, yeah, unfortunately, mate. Well, I think we're over the peak that we've had some success in recent times.
Yep.
An older group is a bit worrisome. Don't have too many kids coming through, mate. So I reckon we
Right.
might fall to the middle of the pack and maybe then some as well.
Okay, so you're going down the theory like the cats that they're just too old, but yet they still keep performing. So we'll see what happens.
And the boys, mate. How you
Uh,
tracking?
well, I've I don't follow the shenanigans off season. I know we've lost some pretty key people, but I don't know who they've been replaced with. You probably know more than me, to be honest. But yeah, I'll still actively support and follow despite despite what happens. But yeah, looking forward. The cricket season was great. Loved the Ashes, but time for footy.
Yeah, can't believe summer's almost over.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Ash, today's chat, obviously, our previous conversation, we obviously a lot of these case studies are really taking up a lot of discussion, and I wanted to keep some of the topics a little bit separate. But today's one, we were chatting about retirement previously. My obviously case study or topic more so than a case study is about should people be paying off their paying extra off their HECS debt, their help debt, their university loans? Should they be working really hard to pay that off? And I do have an opinion on this, and I'm keen to know what your thoughts, whether it's different or not, doesn't matter. But yeah, should you be doing that in preference to building a house deposit or putting extra money into superannuation for retirement, or paying down your existing mortgage? So without this is a surprise to you, so without any prompting at all, for a young person let's probably think about first home buyer or someone that just has bought at these ridiculously overvalued prices for residential property in Australia, and they've still got a university debt. What's your thoughts?
I can probably base it on my personal experience, Robert, and I've cleared off my HECS debt. Could be somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago. It's been a while now, but personally, I didn't like it. It felt like an extra layer of tax. So when you lodge your
Yes.
tax return, there's all that percentage based going towards a HECS debt. So that was always on my mind in through my 20s, of course, just to get rid of that liability. And so to become debt free in that space was a bit of a motivation, a bit of a goal of mine. So I do believe the tax rate's very conservative, so I knew that also having a mortgage at that time, it made more sense to put additional income or additional capital into the mortgage, but I also wanted to be debt free, get rid of that HECS debt as quick as I can to free up more cash flow, more capital throughout the year. So that's more of a sort of a mental barrier for me, mate. I wanted to get rid of one loan and
Yeah.
reduce the amount of debt I had. So that was my personal experience.
Yep. And Ash, we've often I've downloaded some pretty cool calculators, which I'd recommend people that have multiple debts download a Snowball, you know, debt calculator. I think it was Vertex 42 that you and I have used for a lot of years. So you could just Google search that and find this calculator that is for free. That the getting rid of your smallest amount of debt first gives you incentive to then get rid of that to get on the next. Was that partly what you were sort of suggesting then, that you had a big home loan, or obviously probably not as big as what the young people are having to take on now, but to get rid of that smaller loan of your university debt, your HECS or help debt, that was a motivator?
Yeah, I think that was a mental motivation for me. Rob was, obviously most of us will have credit cards these days, but I was always the one to repay that as soon as I put something on that, or sort of tidy it up on
Yes.
a weekly or fortnightly basis. But yeah, getting rid of something that I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. So the HECS
Yes.
debt wasn't significant. I managed to pay that off over a number of years. The end was near with that one, so I really wanted to tidy that up and then focus all my time and attention to the mortgage at that
Right.
point.
Now, because we're talking possibly 15, 16, 17 years ago, so things have changed from a property point of view, Ash, from, not that you're old, but you're not having to deal with the exceedingly high home loan prices now. Do you think that your thought process would change if just bought, or you're still building up a house deposit now?
Yeah, listen, we got into the first house the early 20s, and the amount we had to borrow in comparison to now, and it doesn't seem that long ago I was that age, but you could more than double or triple the amount of lending required to get into a first home, or something that's considered reasonable. So
Yes.
absolutely, the amount of debt and responsibility taken on by young people these days with HECS debts, I definitely change my frame of thinking.
Yes.
Um, and I'll actually really focus on a mortgage, considering interest rates only went up in recent weeks as well,
Yeah.
putting more pressure on cash flow and the amount required just to pay your minimal basic principal and interest. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you, Rob. I would definitely, reconsider the path that I took. But as I said, mine was more of a light at the end of the tunnel. There's not much left on this. I'm going to focus some bit of extra income, bit of extra capital just to clear that off. It felt like an extra tax at the end of the day that,
Yeah.
you're paying that off over an extended period of time. You just like to see it go.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ash. And that's real life experience. I think the work that I did, I suppose, in having this discussion, and it was a video that went online, and obviously really, there was a lot of comments there, and for me, what I was suggesting, that there should be a bit of a pecking order and a list of priorities. And I actually had paying off your HECS debt as a very low priority. Yes, the government will take out what they want to based on the rules, but I'm essentially saying don't pay any extra off. And there's, I suppose, there's some precedents why I've said that, and one was when we had inflation running at 7%, and of course these HECS debt, there's not an interest rate to it, but there is an inflation rate. And when at 7%, all of a sudden people on some very large amounts of money were going to have 7% added to it, that was exceedingly unpopular. So Albanese unwound that. So it wasn't 7%, and it was probably closer to 3%, and then changed the rules to make sure that that couldn't happen again. So there was a precedent around that they were looking after, probably from a vote catching point of view, the young people. And then obviously the federal election, there was a full 20% discount applied to the HECS debt. And I thought, well, gee, there's another reason why, another precedent to say, gee, for those that worked really hard to pay theirs off, or family came in and helped to pay it off, and then you just missed out on that 20% discount. And I think for me, there's a third one, and where I look at what the independent senator, politician David Pocock, and what Punters Politics, and I'm not sure of that chap's name, but he is an absolute legend, how they are really calling out some of the craziness in our systems, where there's really not the balance there should be. It doesn't make common sense that there is more tax raised through beer than what there is from our gas industry. That our students, or students in the past, are paying more in HECS repayments than what the gas and the energy sector are paying. So they're calling out these imbalances that just don't pass the common sense rule. And we do have Norway as a very clear example, shining light of what we could have been, for the previous 20 years, in terms of the way they tax the use of the natural resources, and then build up a sovereign wealth fund of $2 trillion.
Right.
That could have been us, but our political terms are too bloody short. So obviously that gets a little bit political, but that's obviously the background to my thinking, that the interest rate's not high, and I think there is a push to get the balance right. And then for me, it's about building up a large deposit. Why do we need a large deposit? And that is because, yeah, Australian residential property is just so exceedingly expensive that the average debt now is sitting around $700,000, and that is a handbrake for people's balance of life and lifestyle. And yeah, so not a fan of the amount of money that our banks have been allowed to lend to the average Aussie.
You mentioned, Rob, that there was sparked a bit of conversation online when you produced some topics on this. What was some of the feedback you were getting? What was the general consensus there?
Yeah, it was quite interesting where people, I felt as though people get quite tunnel vision. They go, oh yes, but the HECS debt is taken into account for your borrowing capacity. And I say, yep, that's true. That's not wrong, but having a whacking great deposit also affects your borrowing capacity as well.
Yeah.
So that came from a very black and white lens. That yeah, if you've got great a great deposit and a great proof of savings history, yeah, and unfortunately, people have got to go to the maximum of what the bank will lend them to buy in this overpriced country of Australia, knowing that we've seen Sydney overtake Hong Kong as the most expensive city in the world. Hong Kong was there for decades, so that was probably the main thing that people would bring up, that it affects your borrowing capacity. So yes, it would, but having a great big deposit will also affect your borrowing capacity. Hopefully, it means you've got less debt, which means you can have more balance in life, free cash flow to, have balance in life where you can have enough cash flow to enjoy life and not just be tied to these monster loans to the banks that are making so much money out of the average Aussie.
In the scenario, Rob, where a client has been successful getting the home loan, they've also got a HECS debt as well, and they may have a bit of extra income on top of just paying the basic principal and interest and obviously servicing HECS along the way as well. What would be the general suggestion there to allocate that surplus income? Would it be, okay, now we take care of HECS, now we put it towards the home loan? What would be a preference there?
Yeah, for me, because of it's only going to be increased, the HECS is only going to be increased with, the rate of inflation, and you're going to be charged, 5, 6, 7% on your home loan. I still lean towards the home loan as the priority. So I think paying down your debt or building up the deposit. And keep in mind, people should be looking into the First Home Super Saver scheme. Not many people have heard of this. This is where you can save a deposit with pre-tax money, and that's something that people don't use. And the main reason for that is obviously everyone likes to save tax. This will help. This is the most tax efficient way to build a house deposit, but people don't use it because they don't have the patience to do it over a number of years. That's my view on that.
Thanks, Rob.
So I would, I'd put the mortgage or the deposit above that of the HECS debt.
A tricky question for you, mate, and sorry to put you on the spot here. We know university fees aren't getting cheaper, and we could be going into tens and thousands of dollars of debt. If we compare it to US, it's probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hopefully, we don't
Yeah.
go that far. But will there be some situations where someone could pick up a 50, 60, $70,000 HECS debt, but may not have the ability to repay that during their working life? At what point do we take those debts into our estate that need to be repaid? Have we come across any circumstances or situations where that's a thing?
Yeah, I think since university's been turned into a business like it has, and this is where all these big debts evolve, it's relatively new over the last, 10, 20, 25 years. I'm not sure then, when all this has been introduced, because I think it wasn't that long ago. And on the weekend, I have a run with a mate, and we often reflect on how universities, this has been turned into a business. This is now a profit centre and he just went 57, that when he went to university in Sydney, he got that for free.
Right.
So we're not there yet to see the outcome of, the perpetual student taking on his or her third or fourth course, but that's probably less likely to happen now, where people just become perpetual university students and live in the academic world because it's fully funded. But this is, again, there is no perfect, but it's about balance. So I don't really have an answer to,
No.
how is that going to be if there's a debt there. Does death relinquish the estate, the family of any debts? There would be rules, and people that probably spend more time in that world would already know that one.
Yeah, the reason I asked, Rob, just out of curiosity, was I think you have to earn in excess of about $60,000 this year. Now, I could be rough with the number there, but there's circumstances where one spouse may not be working, raising children, not earning that level of income for a long time, and may not have the years to pay off high debts. But that's a one-off case study there.
Yeah, but an interesting one, and probably one I don't have the exact
No.
answer for you. All my tertiary education was paid as I went, because it was all correspondence and wasn't traditional O week like a lot of the young ones are doing probably right at the moment. So it wasn't traditional O week. It was me working as a financial advisor and studying, which we've both just finished our I suppose formal studies in the last few years.
Yeah.
Terrific. All right, Ash, I think we've probably chatted enough about that one. Ash, where can people find you if they're after a little bit more information and education?
Yeah, if you Google Consortium Private Wealth, our main website will show up, but you'll also find both Rob and I on social media. So we're across the main ones. There's TikTok and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all that. We're producing frequent content that if any of this is of interest, you'll find us pretty quickly. So I think what they call it, a handle or whatever it is, Ashley Rowan FA, and yours, Rob?
It varies a little bit, but check out Rob Goudie. But please be cautious of fake accounts for both Ash and myself. We will never DM anyone first. If you do get a DM from us, what seems to be us, it will not be us. It'll be a fake account that's trying to scam you. So please be very careful of that. Our YouTube channel, which we're coming up to 1,000 videos there. It's been Ash and my labour of love since 2012, so I'm very proud of the work we've done there over the last ages, the last 14 years, and so there's a lot of content there in addition to the other socials. If anyone's got a topic that they would like covered, obviously combined experience for Ash and myself, it's 16 years and just rolling over 28 years, so essentially a lot of time. There's a lot of experience here, so if you've got a topic that you would like covered, Ash and I are more than happy to do so. So please leave comments on wherever you're watching this one and we'll have a crack at it. Thank you, Ash. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll catch you next week or next session, whenever.
Thanks, Rob.
Cool. Thanks, Ash.